Iraq right now besides the one being waged on the ground. It's been going on for months, and it will continue long after the guns fall silent. It's the information war. Some might call it the propaganda war, and it's being fought with messages and images. The final objective, from the U.S. point of view, is to persuade the Iraqi people, the American public, and world opinion, especially in the Middle East, that this isn't a war against Islam or Iraqi citizens or a war over oil. The commanding general, so to speak, is a 43-year-old former political operative and public relations executive named Victoria Clark, and she has played a key role at the Pentagon.
From top to bottom in this building, everything we do in terms of how we organize and train and equip and fight, information plays a huge role in the 21st century from a military perspective.
Someone said that this is probably the largest information campaign that's ever been conducted in the world.
That's probably true.
That was good.
Tori Clark, as she's known to pretty much everyone, is not just a Pentagon spokesperson. She is Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs, the person in charge of shaping the way Americans and much of the world view this war. Given the volume of information and the speed it travels, the job has become vital to achieving the Pentagon's military objectives.
The enemy is surrendering and scattering.
We don't go up against traditional armies and navies and air forces as much as we used to. But the kinds of adversaries we face, whether you're talking Al-Qaeda and Taliban or the Iraqi regime, use disinformation with great skill. They're very good at it. So we've reorganized, we've re-equipped, we've changed the way we do things to meet and overcome those challenges. This is the U.S. military unplugged. We have close to 700 independent, objective, tough-nosed, hard-scrabble journalists out there of all sizes and shapes, and they are showing it like it's happening. It's live. You're watching this war live. You know, how much more of a non-spin zone could you have than that?
It was designed for domestic consumption, and it was designed to show the American people what we were doing and to keep support on the home front.
Sure.
Right?
First and foremost, we wanted people to see the skill and the dedication of the U.S. military. It's just phenomenal. I wanted everybody to see that, and they're seeing it. And two, it's one thing for Tori Clark to stand up at the podium and say truthfully, Saddam Hussein is using and exploiting civilians. It is a whole other thing, and it has more credibility, particularly in other parts of the world, when it's CBS or CNN International or Al Jazeera saying that, and it's occurring.
But reports from the field give a fairly narrow view of what's really going on. So the administration has tried to present what it calls the big picture 3 times a day with carefully coordinated messages. First, from Doha.
There is still work to be done.
Then the Pentagon.
And there will still be tough fighting.
And finally, the White House.
There still is fighting ahead of us.
That message is crafted by veterans of political campaigns. But Tori Clark bristles at the suggestion that anyone can stage manage a war.
I just don't think you can. You know, it's real life. People die, people get hurt. I just don't think you can manage it. I do think what you can do, and you should do, is make an extraordinary effort to get the truth out there as much as possible in huge volumes at a very...
Opponents of the war, like Harper's Magazine publisher John MacArthur, who wrote a scathing book on propaganda and censorship in the first Gulf War, are now acknowledging the administration's success, up to a point.
The Pentagon has done a brilliant job of propaganda for the American people. I mean, the ratings are spectacular. Everybody was watching TV. Everybody's happy the war's over. Bush's poll ratings are way up. But if they really believe that they're winning the hearts and minds of Arabs all over the Middle East by knocking over Saddam Hussein, they're kidding themselves.
People in the Middle East and in much of Europe not only have a different cultural and historical perspective than Americans, they're watching a different war. Arab networks like Al Jazeera have transmitted graphic pictures of civilian casualties. And for Arabs, the sight of American tanks on Baghdad streets has an entirely different meaning.
This was the wild card in the deck that Tori Clark couldn't control. And as I said, she can only control what happens to some extent in the United States. She can't control what happens overseas. And they showed some pretty awful stuff. I mean, they really were showing corpses every night, babies, women and children, mutilated bodies, and so on and so forth. And you can say this is anti-American propaganda, but it was real. They weren't making it up.
It's on this front in the information war that the U.S. has made little progress, although Assistant Secretary of Defense Tori Clark says things are not as bad as they could be.
A lot of people predicted that if and when we went to war with Iraq, there would be terrible uprisings in the Arab street, regimes would be toppled, and horrible things would happen. There have been protests. There have been, in some countries, there have been protests of some significant size. But knock on wood, we haven't yet seen the terrible uprising in the Arab street that people expect.
You would have to agree that in the Arab world and in much of Europe, this has not gone the way we wanted it to in the newspapers.
Well, I wouldn't make that kind of gross generalization.
So you're unwilling to acknowledge that this military action is having an adverse impact to the image of the United States around the world?
Oh, I think what we are doing is demonstrating wonderful, wonderful things about the United States. You look at the way we are prosecuting this war, and we've made it so clear. We want to end this regime, as many, many people around the world do, as many Iraqis do, with the fewest number of civilian casualties.
Tory Clark and these people come out of advertising and PR backgrounds, and they think that if you just repeat the same message enough times, you win. And I suppose they're right in the short term, but in the long run, I think they're wrong.
Kanan Makia is a noted scholar and a key member of the Iraqi opposition. He believes the quickest way to change world opinion about the war is to make sure everyone in the Middle East learns all the gory secrets of Saddam Hussein's rule.
As prisons become possible to investigate, as documents become available and so on, it's very important to get Arab television stations in there, European television stations, all those organizations and countries that had doubts about the meaning of this war and the justness, the essential justness of this war. Because this is where the moral high ground lies, and this is what was not sufficiently emphasized before the war started.
In the streets of Baghdad and Basra, another phase of the information war is just beginning. After 24 years, Saddam Hussein's regime is gone, and millions of Iraqis will need food and shelter, law and order, protection and justice, help and guidance. Commando Solo, the flying radio station, is trying to fill the information void, and before long, there will be television and newspapers doing the same. But the only people who may be able to change the Arab mindset against the war are the Iraqis themselves. And Kanan Makia says that won't happen until the promise of a new regime is fulfilled and the Americans have gone home.
There is a battle to be won for hearts and minds in the Arab world. And again, Iraqis are going to be key to winning it, because they're the ones who would go out in the streets and say, look, this is what was done to us. You, our fellow Arabs, our fellow Muslims. We call this a liberation. How dare you say it's anything else?
Uma edição de dezenas de emissoras diferentes. Essa parte você não pode esquecer. Dezenas de emissoras diferentes, em diferentes momentos, lendo exatamente o mesmo texto. Como se houvesse alguém lá de cima determinando o que todas as emissoras falassem. É exatamente o mesmo texo. Dá uma olhada.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities, the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and trending irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of
Eles falaram todos juntos, o mesmo texto. Nós estamos preocupados com essas desinformações que aparecem nas redes sociais que estão destruindo o nosso país.
Biased and false news has become all too common on social media.
Notícias falsas e enviesadas têm se tornado muito comuns na mídia, né, na internet.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
E algumas noticiadores independentes publicam essas mentiras sem checar primeiro. Agora eu quero que você preste atenção. Nós estamos falando de dezenas, tá bom? Dezenas de emissoras diferentes falando exatamente o mesmo texto.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common.
O compartilhamento de enviesadas e notícias falsas tem se tornado muito comum nas redes sociais.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda.
Preste atenção, gente. Nós estamos falando de dezenas de emissoras falando exatamente o mesmo texto. Quem que decide de onde saiu esse texto é a pergunta. Agora vem a parte que chama atenção. Isto é, essa questão de várias pessoas dando as suas opiniões nas redes sociais, isto é, de acordo com eles, extremamente